Well, and we have struggled with that because we've been doing environmental performance best practices, et cetera, for decades. And so the question is, people will not expect this, but General Motors is relatively humble with respect to what we talk about on whether it's the philanthropic side or what we do in some of the environmental and safety issues. And there has been a movement within the company to say, you know, it's not enough to just do these things. People have to know about that. So we have to get into a mode of engaging more and being more transparent of what we're doing. And we do it in some areas better than others, but I think the best example was the Chevy Volt. And one of the things we took, it's big risk. We are developing the lithium-ion batteries for that product with suppliers at the same time we're developing a product. First time we've ever done that. But we think it's very important to get to the plug-in hybrids, and so you have to accelerate that. So how do you do that? Well, we made an announcement before we know really whether the batteries are going to work specifically for this 40-mile of zero gasoline. It's so important to all of us that we wanted to go out and actually tell people about it, announce it. We did a stakeholder dialogue before we actually did the official announcement. We briefed 500 people about 6 weeks before the announcement in January, and not one person broke that embargo because it was that important for people to say, this could change the world of the automobile. And what we committed to once we made that announcement is that we would continually update people on what we're doing. And that's risky because it's going to be, we're going to have to show and say, there are some things that we just don't know how to do yet. We're not right. I mean, people look to us to have all the answers. And sometimes as we're doing this Volt, we're going to bring people along and be more transparent. That's contrary to our culture. I mean, we want to bring out a product that's got the best quality, best fuel economy, best safety, and just market that once it's completed. But you can see, I think, even from the interaction I've had at this conference, that Volt broke through. And it broke through because it was a big design story. It's a beautiful vehicle. It's got the plug-in technology. The fact that you can go 40 miles without using a drop of gasoline, it changed the conversation for us. So I think that was a very important learning for us to be more transparent. We have, as you know, engaged for many years with environmental groups, et cetera, but it really, you have to get it very simple for the consumer, which is, what are you doing that's going to make a difference? And for us, it does boil down to the product. And so the Chevy Volt has really enabled us to talk about everything else we're doing in addition to the Volt, because we were transparent and opened up with some risk associated with that.
I mean, even though it's not coming out till
2010. We'd like it today. Everybody would. Everybody wants to buy one.
But I'd imagine that it cuts both ways, that some people would say that as a sort of the proverbial man on the moon thing. We don't know how we're going to do it yet in terms of the battery, but we're committed to doing this. And other people would say, well, it's greenwash, or as they say in the IT world, vaporware. It's something that we're going to announce, but you can't buy. What kind of feedback are you getting?
Well, actually, on this one, we had very positive feedback, but it's one of those situations where we as a large company are criticized if we don't talk about things we're doing, and we're criticized if we do talk about things we're doing. So we just try to balance that, but I would say overwhelmingly positive with respect to the Volt, and the fact that there are a few that say, oh, that's a great PR ploy. Well, as we've talked about, we're spending billions of dollars on fuel cells and hybrids and the Volt and plug-ins, and I wish I had $1 billion PR budget, but it's all real. And so I think the more we tell people and bring people in to see what we're doing, the more people accept that we're working hard on these issues. So,
Auden, and I'd like to address all of you to address this, is how do you and each of your respective companies decide where to set the bar? There is no standard for green or sustainable business. In fact, one of the things I've been talking about for the last few years is that we don't have an answer when it comes to business and the environment of how good is good enough. We don't know, and because if you operate on the premise that the market for any idea or technology, pretty much anything, requires norms and standards, whether it's USB or generally accepted accounting principles, or driving on the right side of the road, we don't have a common language conversation. So as you go about your business and drive the environmental side of those companies, how do you decide how good is good enough?
I think we do have that common ground, and it's as a company, in some ways for a decade, I worry that we have done your 10 sexy projects thing. We did 100 sexy projects, and then I started looking at, and we became very well known, and we've got a great reputation as a green company. And I looked at the only metric that mattered, which was CO2 footprint, and it was going up. And I said, fundamentally, I've failed at my job. So we know where we have to go. Scientists tell us 80% by 2050, 90% by 2100 CO2 reductions. So how do you get there, and how can you be realistic about what matters? And having that goal helps you understand what matters. And here's an example. It's a humble example, but people focus on what they can understand. And I get regular calls from people who say, this is what our season pass looks like. And they say, Auden, can we recycle those? Or can we make them out of corn? And my response that infuriates them, and people have abandoned my programs because of what I said, and that's my personality, I apologize. But I've said that is a distraction. It's not just that it doesn't matter, it's actively bad. It's in the same way that when Noam Chomsky says sports are good for totalitarian governments, because if you're watching the Broncos, you're not paying attention to what they're doing in Iraq. In the same way, if you're focusing on recycling this pass, you're missing the big picture. So this understanding of what matters helps us get at what a ski resort should do. Well, everything we do on the ground is irrelevant. You could take the emissions from the whole ski industry, eliminate it, and we'd still go out of business in 100 years. But we have a name that we can use as a lever that can drive change in the world. So the most important thing we ever did, for example, was file an amicus brief to the Supreme Court on Massachusetts versus EPA, asking them to regulate CO2 as a pollutant. That lawsuit won. And when I went to our management, I said, and our owners, I said, this is the most important thing we've ever done, including opening our doors in 1947. And they said, we beg to differ.
Thanks for sharing.
But what you just asked, and that understanding of where we have to go makes us realistic about what actions matter and which don't.
Yeah, and I think that's very important, especially for a company like General Motors, because we really do want to be part of the solution. But we tend to get in a situation where we get distracted where someone has the idea of the month or the idea of the year.
Yeah, your customers are saying recycle, and you say, well, we're not going to recycle, we're going to do this. Well, we don't care about that.
Right.
Too
so
bad.
We have to do a combination, because you can't alienate your customers. You certainly, I mean, your skiers want to know you're going to have a slope there and you're going to be able to ski, right? Mm-hmm. So if they want to recycle a pass every once in a while or whatever, I bet you're going to figure out how to have some kind of program to make some of them happy. Not at all? But it is a combination. But I think what's really important is you have to work on the right things. And so one of the things I give our CEO, Rick Wagner, the credit for is we had a lot of distractions in the last 4 years, including not making any money, losing a lot of money. And so what he was on a mission was, but are we going to be around for the next 100 years? And what is our business strategy? What does it mean on the product side? Where do we have to be with respect to advanced technology? And what we have to do is we have to invest in it for today. We have to understand that people are saying no to fuel cells, no to ethanol, no to electric vehicles, yes to this, yes to this. What is our strategy for advanced technology? How do we execute that and stay with it, so that those solutions will hit the road at the right time when oil is where it's going? We cannot continue to run our business solely on oil. And so that's the strategy we've been executing, but certainly we have had to do some projects that maybe weren't totally aligned with solving that problem, because you have to do something today to keep customers happy as well.